climate distress and anxiety. And today I have with me the Climate Chaplain, and her name is Gabrielle Gelderman, and she's joining us from Canada.
I started as a climate organizer, climate activist. My sister recruited me to my first meeting, and I remember feeling really out of place and not sure if it was the right fit, and then really getting swept up in it and doing some intense organizing for several years. At the time, I was also working as an environmental educator, so I was outside a lot, working with kids, and the combination of both of those things, I think, just pushed me to this breaking point of really having to grapple with the reality of the climate crisis, about the future and about, the kids, the future for younger generations. And I, kind of had my own, it was a spiritual crisis, it was a climate crisis or climate anxiety crisis, it was kind of a mental health breakdown. And for me, spirituality was such an important part of finding my way again and finding my feet and finding a reason to keep going. When I start to explain it, people, especially people in the chaplaincy world, they're like, oh, of course, it makes a lot of sense. I have a active Instagram account that I make a lot of memes, and that's been a really interesting way to connect with young people, especially. Is kind of a moment where it finally clicked that there was a need for spaces that integrated spirituality and made space for grief and anxiety within the climate movement with other young people. I just saw that in my comrades and my friends, and wanted to figure out a way to help make those spaces a reality. There's something so innate in humans to have a circle. In all cultures there's healing circles, they're really there seems like this universality with it. Our culture doesn't support grief, doesn't teach us how to grieve. People don't have other shared spaces for grief. Maybe, the exception being a funeral or memorial, which is really important, or they have one-on-one therapy. There isn't a lot of group therapy options. There's a real heartbrokenness, I think, that people have for the world and definition. But the one I used in my thesis was spirituality is the experience of meaningful connection on either the level of connection to ourselves, connection to the other, or connection to something bigger than ourselves. But in a more maybe poetic sense or a more lived sense, I think of spirituality as the experience of really feeling alive, really being in your life, living your life to the edges. To me, that's the, spirituality is just life. It's not something separate from life. So I think of spiritual practices as the practice of really engaging with life, opening up to it. Lots of our coping mechanisms are us closed off, are us numbing ourselves, are us avoiding the reality of what's in front of us because it's painful. But when we avoid reality, we avoid the beauty and the love that's right in front of us. I'm, just recently kind of realizing how much powerlessness people feeling powerless. But for me, that's where spirituality comes in. That's a way of, we don't have control. We're not in control of, or most things we're not in control of. And how can we trust that something else is holding us or is in? Almost always the thing that comes up first isn't actually the climate grief itself, isn't grief specifically about the climate crisis. It's this grief around how alone they feel.